Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Armenian Music Project. The episodes that I've done, it's all been musicians. This is the first time I have someone who's not a musician, or maybe he's a musician. I don't know because I just recently met this person virtually. And this is Alex Abrahamian. Welcome to the Armenian Music Project.
Thank you, Tigran. Very nice to meet you. Technically, I would actually say my full government name is Alexander Melik Abrahamian, but
Oh,
Alex is totally fine. Yeah, Melik actually means from the area of Karabakh. Like my parents will say, like we were invited into Iran to like build stuff, but I think history, the actuality was kind of like forced migration. We were treated well in Iran, that's for sure. There's no question about that. But yeah, I don't know how it wasn't like, oh yeah, just come into Iran. It was more like, hey, come in and build some stuff, and you'll be looked after.
yeah. Do you remember what part of Iran your parents were from? What city?
So I believe my grandparents are from an area called what my grandmother on my dad's side is from an area called Mashat Soleiman. My mom is always Tehran. Her lineage goes back to Tehran, and then my mom's mom, she was born in Tiflis, if I'm not mistaken, and her family. So my great grandparents were from Tiflis. Unfortunately, she is also, her lineage goes back to Karabakh, and her grandfather, my great grandfather, unfortunately was killed by an Azeri or a group of Azeris. It was a business deal that didn't go. I mean, I don't know. I guess it was business. They were having difficulty negotiating, and then when they finally made the deal, apparently they crushed some glass, and they put it in a shot glass. And when they all had a cheers for the deal going through, it cut his throat from the inside. So, but I will say my grandmother, God bless her, she never ever taught us any form of hate, any form of anger. She will also say Azerbaijana Takhat Yakira, which means Azerbaijan's a made up country, but she never taught us any hate, which I appreciate very much.
Yeah. And since you mentioned that, there's also a lot of talk about, it's always been there, that unfortunately, because I mean, this is besides everything that's happening now and everything that's happened in the past. I just don't think any children, any youth should be
Oh,
taught to hate in school or by
yeah,
a teacher or by an adult. It's just
yeah,
unacceptable. That
yeah,
sort of stuff is
yeah.
unacceptable. And
I also
that sort of stuff also leads to and I'll let you continue with this, but that sort of stuff also leads to people like Safarov, who killed and axed an
yeah,
Armenian
yeah,
man. When you
yeah.
teach that kind
Barbaric.
of hate from a young age,
Yeah,
there's nowhere good
yeah,
will it lead to. I
yeah,
mean, it's just terrible.
yeah.
Yeah, you were saying.
I was gonna say, like, I 100% agree. I believe people are born good, and unfortunately, the world, circumstance, teaching, um, can change their good nature. Um, as difficult as things are, I feel bad for the children of those countries, and I don't want any people, obviously no Armenians, but also even those who have ill will towards us. I hope that they can live in peace. I don't want any death. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
even I think that's the problem, is like there has to come a point where, I don't know. It has to stop. I I hope, man. I hope I try to be an optimist. I hope our children and our children's children and our children's children's children, and Azerbaijani children and children's children and so on and so forth, they don't continue this. I hope it can come to a stop.
yeah. And since we got to this point,
Hmm.
I'll say a couple of things before I ask the question. But the reason why we even connect is because you made a really interesting video online.
Hmm.
Somehow I got a hold of it, as someone shared it or sent it to me, and I saw it and I thought it was really interesting. And I
Thank you.
followed you, and then we connected there. And you've
Mhm.
been making quite a few videos now on Instagram
I
specifically.
joke. I joke. I'm becoming Armenian Instagram famous these days.
You already are. You already are.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so now that we got to this point, a little bit about uh, how this conflict got started, your ideas, your thoughts. Of course, we're not
Mhm.
political scientists, we're not
Yeah,
politicians. Even those people are still, a lot of the time,
yeah,
they're guessing about what
yeah,
might happen or
yeah,
why things happened.
yeah.
And of course they're guessing from a point of view, where from a place where they know a lot more history and a lot more
Mhm,
understanding of the region and everything that's happening. But you,
mhm.
as someone who is well versed in this situation and know well now, and you also have some family background, how did this start, and why did it start? Why do you think it started? Why do you think, and how did it start? Your opinions, your ideas.
I mean, going far, far back, Turkic people came from Turkmenistan, and I think it was during, this is getting a little historical, but I think during the Safavid dynasty, which was a Persian empire, uh, they came into that area along with the Safavid Persians. And that's when, Armenians were kind of like moved, forced, moved, whatever, invited into Iran. Um, I'm not an anthropologist, so I don't know as much, but I believe the Azeri culture or group, it came from a mix. It came from a mixing of Azeris with Persians in that area, and then I guess because they were around since then, and I'm sure there was an aspect of like a religious component, and also once again like Armenians getting moved into Iran. I noticed this with certain, and this is what I mean by like the perception I think some generations of elder Armenians have is at the end of the day they were taught a certain curriculum in schools, and once again like Persians treated us very well. We were able to have our own schools and all that, but I think the the notion at that time was one such as like Armenians were second class or were considered villagers or in Shurka, like not as developed of a nation at that time, maybe. Um, and I don't know when exactly. Obviously, a lot of the recent issues came during the fall of the Soviet Union, and during the Soviet Union, if I'm from what I've been reading and understanding is the USSR kind of granted that piece of land, O Karabakh, to Azerbaijan in the hopes that it was going to have Turkey, which was still a very, powerful nation at that time, join the USSR, which they didn't do in the end, which is very ironic. Um, and then after the fall of the Soviet Union, that area was still technically part of Azerbaijan at that current time, and they had a vote where they said, we want to secede, we want to go back and be considered part of the Republic of Armenia, since the ethnic majority was that, and since they had a democratic vote. Unfortunately, um, unfortunately, from there tensions started, and then I think a lot of rhetoric, because once again, Azerbaijanis are Turkic people, so there was rhetoric coming from like the Ottomans as well, or modern day Turkey that was the Ottoman Empire, of Armenians are like this and Armenians do that, and so on and so forth. It draws so many parallels, in my opinion, to what like the Nazis did with towards the Jews, of like the issues they were having in their countries were always blamed upon this other people. That one, what is the defining factor of both of these cultures compared? We are Christian, Turks and Azeris are Muslim, Germans are Christian, I think Lutheran, and Jews are a different religion. So there immediately is one thing that you can say like they are this way because of this. They're different than you for this very reason. And so unfortunately from there, this is like continued and continued. I will say, I know this is not going to be popular with many Armenians, but we are similar in some senses. If we are very strong-minded people, both of us, we are like very proud people. We are very, you can say alpha people. So there's going to be a clash in that regard between us.
Something that many Armenians and politicians and Western leaders have been hoping for, a ceasefire, and the ceasefire sort of happened on two occasions during this war. At this point, I know still a lot of people still call it a conflict, but it's, at this point, I think couple of weeks and at such a high rate, fighting at such a high rate is really should be called a war at this point, I think.
I mean, technically, a friend of mine was saying, technically, the war has never finished, because I believe a peace treaty has to actually be signed in order for a war to end. So technically, we've been in war since 91.
Well, technically, I think it started in 88. That's where the conflicts really started.
Yes. So, while there was a long period of, like, we can just say peace or truce, or quiet, I think technically this war has never been resolved. That's the problem.
It's almost was like a 30-year-old ceasefire or something.
Exactly.
But specific to this time period, the two ceasefires, why do you think that never went through?
I think one interesting thing I read, by the way, I'm not that smart, so all this stuff, it's like stuff I'm reading and like other people's opinions and things. But I think if there is a ceasefire, bodies will be exchanged and collected. Now, if one side who has not released the number of bodies, the number of casualties, if that side then has to start documenting this stuff, there's obviously going to be some concerned people, especially if what they're being told is, we're winning, we're like taking this, we're taking that. And then the reality becomes, people are dying. A lot of people are dying, obviously we, the general public, on the Armenian side, whatever you want to say, or us Armenians, we don't know all the facts either, but I like to think our government is quite open. And unfortunately, I don't know, I think we exceeded 800 military deaths from September 27th to today, 24 days, man. That's, I think 40 deaths a day, something like that, maybe 30.
And that's something that I've been thinking a lot about, because going back to the war that, and I looked up the dates again to make sure that we're correct. It's 88 to 94. That's what the dates are. And that's about 6 years. And the Armenian side had about 6,000 people who died during that time. And that's also sort of, I think, confirmed in some ways by international other committees. But at this rate, this is really devastating at this point, because if 6 years, it's 6,000, and it's like 3 weeks or a little bit over 3 weeks, and 800, over 800 or 900 or close to 900, that's really tragic. That's really devastating, because that just, if it keeps going at that rate, it's really, really devastating.
That's the scary thing about like modern warfare, man. Like it's no longer, gun versus gun, sniper versus sniper, people on foot running. It's just, things are normal 1 second, and all of a sudden a drone attacks. Like it's very scary. I mean, it's very unfortunate. Once again, this is hopeful thinking. I think the international community is taking a lot more awareness and acting, obviously not as swiftly, as quickly as we would like, as harshly as we would like, but I feel like this is like on the forefront of a lot of people's minds, because it's escalating very, very fast, and it could get a lot worse too. Hopefully it doesn't get to that point. I am of the belief, like, the thing about nuclear weapons and these weapons of mass destruction is because a number of countries have them. I think that means that there has to be a certain amount of like peace, because it's like, if one person it's gonna be bad, very, 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 very bad. But for that reason, I don't think it will get to that.
Yeah. Well, changing gears a little bit, because we talked about specific to Artsakh and specific to that region and history and everything that's happening there. But now you're an American. You're an Armenian-American, and what from
technically British Armenian.
Oh, really? British Armenian. British Armenian.
Yeah. So yeah, technically I still only have a green card, but yes, I've lived in America for 24 years. So yeah. You're right. I am basically American.
Well, you're sort you know you're a, you're from the West. You're
Yes.
not an
Yes.
Armenian from Armenia specifically living
No.
there and working there. You work
Yeah.
outside of
Yeah.
Armenia. So from that perspective, what are what are your thoughts? What is the youth doing? And I know people will watch this who are Armenian and maybe non-Armenian, hopefully many non-Armenians, but what is the Armenian American youth wanting to do? What is the youth doing now? What are they accomplishing? Just from what you've seen and what you've participated in, because I know you're very active, participating in various protests and other events.
I would say honestly, man, it's maybe like the silver lining in all of this is like seeing how united everyone is. And I think, I mean, one that I think that gives a lot of credit to our elders
Mhm.
because they instilled in all of us um, an understanding of our history and what it's like. As soon as this stuff happened, I feel like every one of our generation, we all knew what it meant. And everyone went into like immediate action. And I'm very proud. I don't feel like, obviously, we're not a monolithic people, like everybody doesn't think the same way. Like how many different Armenian organizations are there that are essentially all doing like more or less the same thing, so there is always this, but I feel like everyone has really come together because there's one goal and one goal only, and that's like the safety of the people of Artsakh, the safety of our soldiers, and the safety of the people of Armenia, and then also obviously our ancestral lands that we're still holding on to. But I feel like everybody has stepped up. Look, man, this is something I thought about. None of us did anything to be Armenian. Our ancestors did. Our ancestors did, they survived. They did what they needed to in order for us to be born and for us to carry on like the language, the culture, the heritage, and know all that. But none of us ourselves, I did nothing to have this privilege of being Armenian. That's why I feel like right now is when I get to earn that IAN, that YAN, ANTS, whatever your last name is. This is the moment, because what you do right now is going to define like whether you're a member of this tribe or you're not. And I don't care if you're half Armenian, half Black, half Armenian, half Filipino, whatever. Like one grandparent was Armenian, but like you were close to them and you identify, whatever. If you call yourself Armenian, this is your time to like act, and it's not a one day thing. Honestly, Tigran John, I hope to God that when this ends, and I hope it ends very soon, I hope we keep the same passion and the same energy and the same sense of duty to our country as we do right now. As I wish we had always done, because it may have helped prevent this situation.
Yeah, and I've been talking to my wife about this a lot recently. Is that again about the Armenians being so united and so passionate about what their understanding of Armenia is, because there are so many people who are so active and passionate about this current situation that I never thought, and I've been telling my wife, I never thought these people would even care if something happened in Armenia, or if Armenia didn't exist. I mean, to that point where I really felt like some of these people were just not, they just didn't care so much about Armenia. But now seeing them so active and passionate and willing to do everything they can,
Yeah.
from people that I know that grew up in the US, who are either on their way or wanting to go there and be there physically, to people who are active and doing various initiatives and events and fighting for what they can do, what they could contribute. It's been such a great moment, and it's unfortunate that a tragedy brings us together. And I hope, as you said, I hope this continues beyond
Yeah.
this, and
Yeah.
I hope we keep on being together and united and building a better Armenia, because it seems like there's so much work to be done, and Armenia has progressed in so many ways over the years, but it'll be great to do even more, so that people really don't try these things again, because it's so unfortunate seeing those families, those kids in
Yeah.
Artsakh being moved out to Armenia. And I have a friend who's a soccer player, plays for a team in Armenia. He's from the US actually, and he just posted a video of him playing with kids that came from Artsakh, because they were invited to the soccer club to just give the kids an opportunity to play a little bit. it's such an unfortunate time, but it did bring us together. Now, from the British, American, Armenian perspective,
Mm-hmm.
what do you want people who are non-Armenian to do? There, as people have talked about this, I don't know what's going on. It's so confusing. There was a history in the 90s. There's something with the Soviet Union and Stalin, and there's some other history from the genocide. You're giving me too much information. I don't even know where to start. I mean, what would you tell someone who really doesn't know what's going on? Any that you would catch their attention? And I know I'm putting you on the spot. You haven't thought about any
No.
questions, but
Yeah.
something that you would say to someone if there was, maybe a 3-minute conversation. How would you describe the current situation?
Look, man, the only way I can think of it is I'm one who's very very I don't know, die hard on like Black Lives Matter. Long before even that statement. Was I physically there when Rodney King was beaten? No. I've seen the footage. I've lived enough in LA, fortunately, to like know the perspective of others, see how my Black friends have been treated, see, like, hear their opinion, hear their side of things, listen to them. With like the conflict and all the technicalities aside, at the end of the day, it seems pretty like there's a line here that's very black and white. Armenians live in Karabakh, whether that's, by internationally recognized as Azerbaijan or not, is regardless of the fact. Armenians live there. Azerbaijan has just publicly said, we will not stop until there are no more Armenians, no more military in Karabakh and Artsakh. So to me, it is as black and white as possible of like some people are in immediate danger of ethnic cleansing, of death, just by living in an area. So that to me already is like very, very black and white. Now, whether you want to go into like the whole technicalities of like, well, it was granted to Azerbaijan by Stalin. I think all you have to ask yourself is it because the U.S. was taken from Native Americans, does that make it right? No. So, and I think there's an issue where some people, maybe because of the color of our skin, they don't see like, okay, Armenians are indigenous to a certain area. They see us in LA maybe of like, oh, they have money, they're flashy, whatever their perceptions are. But the people of Artsakh, Karabakh, Nagorno-Karabakh, whatever you want to call it, these are indigenous people to this area. There's no debating this when like archaeologically and all these sort of things, you can date back the churches going thousands of years. It's not, and this is the other thing. One country is aggressing upon another country. Everything that we have said thus far is peace for Armenians. Now I know Azeris are starting to like take our hashtags and like peace for Azerbaijan, when very, very original, very, very original. Pray for Armenians, and now it's pray for ganja. Yeah, very, very, very original, guys. This to me is very, very just black and white. One country is being an aggressor, the other country is in defense, defending their lives. If you care about human beings, I really don't see how you can side with the aggressor. What we're saying is like, every time, Tigran, every single time that there was a ceasefire, and maybe I'm just an idiot, I was like, oh, thank God. Like I was basically celebrating as if like we had won, like the war. Because I'm like, if people can just stop being killed right now, the rest we can figure out. The rest will it'll be taken care of through negotiation, through compromise, through contingencies, through all that sort of stuff, through diplomacy. But the most important thing, in my opinion, right now is like the killing has to stop. Like these people have to be they have to have their security. And this is all taking place during a pandemic. Whether you want to believe in the pandemic or not, it's taking place during a global pandemic. So unfortunately, COVID now is spiking in Armenia, obviously, because people are in cramped quarters. The last thing these soldiers are thinking about is wearing a mask. And like, that's the last thing I would be thinking about. And probably like chain smoking, like no tomorrow, I'm sorry, I know I went off on a
Oh no,
tangent.
no, that's it's completely fine. I was just thinking about you said the soldiers. There's so much, just so much trauma and so much, depression and all of this that's happening. You could just imagine all the people who, and this is for any war. It doesn't even have to be for this one. I mean, just people who have their sons and daughters out on the front lines and fighting, and you don't hear from them because there's no connection, obviously, for most part. At least that's what I understand. So they're worried about them, and then these kids who are just in constant stress of being in that space, in these
Yeah,
spaces where you don't know what's going to happen the next day. You don't know, you can't even sleep well because you don't know if you'll be attacked at night or
yeah,
not. So it's just such a stressful situation for all these families, and I just can't even begin to imagine what it would be. But I wanted to go back and talk a little bit more from the British American Armenian perspective.
hmm,
Is that it's been a little bit disappointing, and I've heard it from many Armenians. So many people are silent, and also specific to LA, I heard from quite a few friends that they just were just completely shocked to see such coverage from LA papers and news outlets. I was talking to a friend. It's like, oh, if something in North Carolina or someone wrote something terrible about Armenians, okay, well, they probably don't know, they're misinformed or something. But if an LA based news outlet, a paper, or some kind of a news show does something, it's a community that's such a big part of LA. It's a
yeah,
substantial community, right? In
yeah,
LA, Armenians are, and to have that kind of coverage, it seems a bit disrespectful in some way,
yeah,
you know
yeah.
so it's been kind of sad from your perspective. Why are some people still silent? Why
Uh-huh.
has the news been so
Mhm.
kind of not very positive towards Armenians in some ways? I know they've changed it
Yeah,
up quite a
yeah,
bit after many of the protests.
yeah. Well, with the news, I would honestly say, man, like, I think it just goes to show how deep and how far the money goes. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's so many things behind the scenes going on in terms of like our government, the U.S. government, sending money to Azerbaijan, importing oil, Chevron, Mobil, which I don't, I will no longer go to any of these places. All receive oil from that nation. Zara, that's a H&M. Those are countries that receive clothing from Turkey. We as a nation, unfortunately, we offer culture, we offer our intellect, we offer our history, but we don't offer money. We don't offer monetary wealth. So unfortunately, I feel like that is a very big issue and reason. I don't know if any US media outlet, or I certainly hope, has just overtly gone out in support of Azerbaijan. I don't think so. Um, I've my irritation is anytime that they reference us, they always say Nagorno-Karabakh occupied by ethnic Armenians.
Yeah.
What they fail to ever mention is occupied by indigenous Armenians. And I
Mhm.
think that is a very, very, very important detail that is intentionally left out.
Wow.
Because I think when people, I think especially uh, this generation of people who are so motivated and what's the word, like culturally sensitive to like the BIPOC struggle of Black, Indigenous, people of color, uh, it would change the narrative quite a bit. And I think we would also have a lot of other allies or people, maybe bigger organizations would be more on our side and understand what this means. Uh, Once again, to the total credit, and once again, this is just my personal life and what I've seen. I am incredibly grateful for specifically my Black friends and like in general, like BIPOC identifying people who I think by and large are usually the most like active and vocal anytime that there's a wrong being done to humanity. Um, my friends, like I feel bad even calling them friends because they're like family. One woman in particular, Ferembi Collins Bonifer, and her husband Alex Bonifer has known me since I was since my family moved here from America. One of my best friends, Winston Marshall, one of my best friends, Jay Brooks. These people all go out with, like, not only Fremby is in Boston, and her husband are going to protest in Boston, not for, not even to be there to support me, but because Alex grew up in LA, he grew up in Glendale, and they know what this means. They hear 1915 never again like every year. So they, as compassionate people, are going out and doing this. Do I feel that what is taking place to us, it caught the cultural zeitgeist of other movements? No. And that's not to say that other movements don't equally. I'm speaking about Black Lives Matter. I'm speaking about LGBTQ. Obviously, that's a larger segment of American society, and those issues have been in the face of American society a lot more than the issues going on in Armenia. I feel like people are catching up. I'm hopeful about that. I feel like, to people's credit too, look, for us, as soon as we heard of like the first attack in July, we all knew what that meant. As soon as the other attack happened on September 27th, that's when everyone was like, hey, we gotta go. Like, it's happening. To the outside community's credit, I'm sure there's a lot of things that people hear where they're like, at first they're like, maybe they heard it, maybe they didn't. Then maybe a couple more times they're like, oh, okay, well, what are the details? And then they're like, okay, maybe this will run its course. And at this point, it's like, hey, this is still happening. This is like an immediate threat. I've had a lot of people who have reached out. Do I wish you were? And I posted something the other day of like, I started blocking people on Instagram who specifically have not said anything. Specifically, very specifically, I live in Hollywood. I would say in my building, I'm the only Armenian. Everyone is from, everywhere, Black, white, Latino, like a really nice mix of people. From our building up, it's all wealthy white people. From my building down, it's all Armenians who've been here since, the 90s, like early, one of the first generations coming here. But I was on a group chat, and some of the people I was referencing were the people in this building. Because in the group chat, I said like, hey, you guys live in a neighborhood where it's all Armenian. Everyone on this block that looks out for you, that looks out for each other, are Armenian. Down the street, there's a sign, Little Armenia. I know you like the Ponchikanok down the street. I know you like the Arbok grocery. I know you like the mechanic on the corner who's very nice. Like, this is affecting every single person on the street. Those people who still said nothing, I don't have time for them anymore. They're and once again, man, the Black community went through this exact same thing. When George Floyd was murdered on camera, people were up in arms, rightfully so. But and it seemed as if, wow, there's been this shift in like American consciousness. Then Jacob Blake happens, Elijah McClain, like, I believe that's the gentleman's name. I apologize if I got his name wrong. You know, and now, as you know, now there's the whole thing of like end SARS. Now you see those people that were, riding and dying are nowhere to be found, So it's the same thing. They were chasing clout then, and they felt the need to like speak up, or else they would look bad. And then when it comes to Armenians, they're like, I just don't even care. I'm not even gonna pretend,
Well, Alex John, we could talk about this for a long time, and I don't usually give questions to my guests. I told you I have another podcast. I've done over 130 episodes. I don't give questions out. I just kind of write a couple of topics on paper for myself just to go off of, but I kind of just let the conversation flow. But we could talk for a long time, but I kind of want to let it go now and end here. And we could always do this another time and talk about more things, because I do have a long list of things to do, but I also don't want to make this a 4-hour, podcast conversation. Any last words, anything you want to add to the Armenian community and also the non-Armenian community? Any last words you want to add before we end?
I would say to the Armenian community that the work is just beginning. Once this is done, that's when our work really, really starts. and every one of us really needs to keep the same energy that we're doing right now in all the days to come. A friend of mine posed the idea of a diaspora tax. I know we hate the word tax, especially these days, especially some Armenians who like to vote right, let's just say. But I think this is what is needed for our people. And if you care about Armenia, if you're an Armenian, then we need to be doing the things necessary to uplift our own people ourselves. To the non-Armenian community, I would say, I'm not here to shame anyone. I can't make you care, but I really, really hope that you start paying attention and you can do whatever you can, whether it be donating to Armenia Fund, donating to Queerigs, donating. There are all these incredible Armenian businesses where if you buy some great stuff that they're selling, they will send that money then to Armenia. There's so many things you can do that are free, just signing the petitions. Like, don't have your tax dollars go to these nations that are then funding wars with other nations. If you can just post and reshare what other Armenians are putting out there, that will check in with your Armenian friends once in a while. Like, there's no right answer, you know, they're like, we as a community are very happy to, anyone who's willing to listen to what's happened in the history of Armenia, we'll talk your ear off, bro. Like, there's no shame. Like, ask us whatever questions you want. I would just ask, please, like, put yourselves in the position, like, empathize with where Armenians are feeling. And we're all saying the same thing. We're hurting specifically because of how silent people are.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. That was Alex Abrahamian. Thank you for joining me. Have a beautiful evening.
You too. Var Tigran.